Hello and welcome to another episode of R&R's Ask the Expert. I'm Kayla McGowan, Editor-in-Chief, and today we are talking about managing complex restoration projects from assessment to documentation. But before we dive in and announce our guests, this episode is sponsored by our friends at Prism Specialties. Now for my guest. My guest is Boris Skoro. He is the CEO of Prism Specialties Northwest and Prism Specialties of East and West LA. Welcome to the show, Boris.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you for coming on. We have so much to tackle on today's episode. It's just one of those things that I think is not talked about all the time. We talk about parts of the job, maybe not from start to finish. And you have extensive expertise and, you know, knowledge in complex restoration jobs, in commercial specifically, right? So, are you ready to tackle this topic?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Diving right in. So, when a complex restoration assignment first comes in, what's the information that is most critical for your team to gather before you can even determine the right technical skill sets, experience, and resources that is needed for those jobs?
Well, initially, when the assignment comes in, we want to make contact with the insured themselves and do a site inspection, site visit. So the initial assessment is going to be, was it fire? Was it water? Was it flood? Was it storm damage? All of those questions need to be answered. And once we have that information, then we can look at structural integrity. Is it safe to walk into? All of those things. Safety always comes first in my mind. No life is worth anything. I mean, we have to take our safety very, very seriously. But after that, we look at what type of equipment is it? What kind of loss is it? Is it a manufacturing facility? Is it a food processing plant? Is it a nuclear facility? Is it a data center? So a variety of different factors that need to be answered. So those things are really, really, really critical to me. I mean, we've walked into hospitals, pharmaceutical fulfillment plants. So once we gather that information and we know what the complexity of the equipment is, then we can determine a course of action, how to move forward, what other information is necessary, and so on. So
Yeah, and
that's
I would
kind
oh, go
of
ahead.
it. No, 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 you go ahead.
I was gonna say, you mentioned some key things there. Safety is the basis and foundation of what we do every day. We have to make sure that safety is always at the forefront, right? We cannot just run in and not think about our safety. And
Right.
you mentioned that there's several types of facilities that work does actually happen in. And so I think that there's other hazards depending on the whether it's a commercial or a residential or governmental or data centers, gosh, there's computers and all of these things, electricity, and if water has made its way in there, that's a bigger hazard. And so, assessment is one of the most important parts of our job. It helps us complete the job to the capacity that it needs to be completed, but also keeps us and our customers safe. So, thank you for sharing those details because I think those are some wise words, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. 30 years of background experience has taught me, we been there, done that. We use that motto. So we reflect a lot on past jobs, post job. We call it a detox. Basically, is we after we finish a job, we bring the entire crew back in, the leadership, of course, and we go backwards through the job. What could have we done better? What we did good, what were the missteps, and so on. So we get a lot of information that we can use on the next or future jobs.
Yeah, and that's really important too to always debrief and look at what went well, what didn't go well, what you could have done
Mhm.
better. Because let's face it, there's always room for improvement. But there's also moments to say, hey, a couple of jobs ago, we really didn't do this well, but look at us now. We've really solidified that. And now we're on to the next thing that we can do a little bit better. So, with that being said, what do strong initial assessment skills look like? And how does that assessment influence the decisions about the scope, your staffing, and whether you need to bring the insured's engineering team or equipment manufacturers in on that job?
So once we have the initial walkthrough, but and kind of get us an idea of what it is, Once we have that, then we do a deeper dive. So we get if it's a manufacturing plant, let's just say we just did a project upstate New York where the plant supplied 80% of all military grade aluminum sheeting in the United States. So time is of the essence. So we look at BI, business interruption. We look at, again, safety. We look at the their own maintenance team and their own engineering team's assessments and what is it that they're looking for? Do they want to be up and running as quickly as possible? Are they concurrently operating while we're doing the decontamination? I mean, all of those things will influence our scope and how we are going to operate. Then we want to make sure that the insurance carrier is on the same page as the insured so that we're not playing one side against the other and we're stuck in the middle somewhere. So we want to make sure that everybody's on the same page, and that's where communication comes in. A lot of times when we're dealing with, let's just say we're dealing with a hospital where you have scientific equipment like MRI machines and things like that, that's where we want to bring in the manufacturers to come back in and recalibrate, recertify, and put back into operation that particular product that we decontaminated.
Yeah, and
So,
I would definitely. Oh, so go ahead. Sorry.
no, 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 you go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's
Ladies first.
so kind of you. Thank you. I was just gonna say that, the communication is such an important piece of what you do day in and day out. And you mentioned this, and it was very well said. You don't want to be put in the middle, but you also don't want to be putting the two people you're working with against each other either. It's everybody needs to work together. And then that final piece is once you're done with the work, if there are machines that need to be calibrated and things like that, you need to allot for that time, but you also need to communicate with that part of the project and let them know, hey, we're clear of this area. You can now go ahead and do things. Because I think that, business interruption is a big thing that you mentioned. And sometimes things that get lost in communication cause a business a lot of money. And so we're not just dealing with you guys going in there and doing the job. There's a bigger ecosystem that's affected, and it's really important to make sure that you're leveraging all parties involved. But most importantly, communication is we get paid to communicate. Let's be so real, right?
Well, and it's the lifeline of the job. The communication is really a critical factor because, we'll have morning shift meetings where you have to pull permits for certain, if you're doing confined space, you have to have safety protocols in place. Even though we have our own safety protocols, Prism safety protocols, the manufacturer may have, or the facility may have their own safety protocols. Their OSHA standards may be different than our standards. We operate in all 50 states of the United States, so we have to learn what safety standards are for that particular area as well. And so the communication is very, very critical. And then also communicating with the insurance on a daily basis, whether they have their own representatives, such as consultants, consulting groups like YAJ Held or NSLM or a bunch of different ones out there. But anyway, so it's really, really important to communicate, given daily reports, daily crew logs, daily progress reports, consumption reports. All of that is very, very critical on a daily basis.
Yeah, and I would say you kind of hinted at kind of where I'm going with my next question because I think there are large jobs and highly technical losses that you guys see on a regular basis. So, with all of what you've shared already, how do you scale that and mobilize a large group of technicians while making sure that everyone has the right expertise and is working towards the same objectives? Bigger jobs, bigger problems, right?
Well, and it's all about organization, so that's a great question. That's a question that a lot of people stumble across. I mean, they stumble on. I mean, we've done it for years. And so we've developed a really great team home office, our Portland office, where we have two people that do nothing, but they do schedule flights. They provide lodging. They provide transportation. They provide the infrastructure for to do all of that has to be in place already, and to mobilize. Let's just say on this last project that we did, well, not last, one before last that we did, we had 115 techs on site, and managing 115 technicians on site is it's like herding cats. I mean, but they're great guys. It's just, you have to have security, safety, logistical transportation. We have to make sure that everybody has a seat belt and a seat assignment in a vehicle. We have to, I mean, all of the stuff that we don't even think about on a daily basis. We have to make sure to accommodate for each employee's safety. We lost two vehicles, for example, to accidents with employees in them, and during shift changes and stuff like that. So we have to make sure that nobody got killed or hurt, thank God, but accidents do happen. So we have to preemptively ensure a positive outcome.
Yeah, and I would definitely say too, it's not just about what we control. There's other things outside of what we control
Mm.
too. And so to your point, the accidents, that can happen at any time to anybody. And if you don't have things in place like seat assignments and seat belts and people that are coordinating these important details in the office, things can get lost in translation. But most importantly, there could be liability issues, but that's why
Exactly.
everybody comes together,
I didn't
right?
want to use that word.
But I'm just saying, we have to, everybody in our industry has some type of liability, and I think it's a big thing. That's why, organization is such a big part of what we do, as well as communication. I know that word can be a very scary word. So,
Yes,
um,
yes, 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 yes. We call it
but
exposure.
hey, that's a good word.
There
Uh,
you go.
so with that being said, we did kind of talk about communication a little bit ago, but communication can become complicated, especially when you're working with other contractors or subs, right? Um,
Mhm.
so when you have, professionals and insureds and engineers and manufacturers and other stakeholders involved, how do you manage that information flow with the communication and documentation throughout the project, which I know that you probably have somebody dedicated, but what does that look like?
Well, so it looks like I'll just describe one of the last projects that was very intense. Well, two of them. So the one project that we were involved in was with quantum computer systems, which were out there. I mean, it's the next thing. So we're dealing with lasers. We're dealing with physicists that have all kinds of questions. So we arrange usually a morning before shift meeting with the entire staff, and then they have an opportunity to. We tell them exactly what we intend to do during that day, and then we ask them exactly what the outcome for that day looks like in their mind, and so that way we're both aiming at the same target. And that's really critical alignment. And once you have that alignment on a daily basis, it's great. On the last project that we did in upstate New York, the uh, the aluminum processing plant, we had 4 meetings a day. We had a 6 a.m. meeting. We had to pull permits for that day for the area of operation. We had to get safety protocols in place. We had to get, fire watch in place. We had to meet with the electrical department. We had to meet with mechanicals. I mean, and all of those, meetings had to occur. And that's part of multiple people being involved. We had, I think, 16 tech leads there, and 3 people would go to the meetings every day, which I was one of them most of the time. And so I wanted to make sure that I babysit that project to the end. So, well, you have mission critical projects. So we do a lot of work with Homeland Security. We do a lot of work with high risk projects that, when you're dealing with a company that provides 80% of military grade product to anywhere in the world, but just to the United States, that's a critical project. and
Mhm.
it's mission critical for the country, not let alone for our little piece of the pie here, so to speak, you know. So we want to make sure that we do everything we can to have a positive outcome all the way around for everybody involved.
Yeah, and I would definitely say too, it's a lot of responsibility for that mission critical. They're depending upon you, right? Like
Absolutely.
you get to I was gonna say you get to carry that pride with you because then you get through that job and you're like, wow, we made a difference, not just in this job, but potentially for our armed services, right? And I think again, that's the emotional side and the rewarding side of what we do every day because obviously when you're boots on the ground and you get to partake in that, you take pride in your work every day, but to see what impact it does have after you've completed that work is really priceless. And I think sometimes we often don't acknowledge that part of what we do every day. So I just really wanted to say something about that because I think
Well, I
that it's
appreciate that.
you are so welcome. It's really important. It's a
Appreciate that
important
very
part of what
much.
you do, you know?
No, I really take great joy in personally great joy in providing a service that is sometimes not even known that it even exists out there. You know, so we did three projects in my life that I thought that were really kind of mission critical type projects. One of them was this one that I just talked about, the aluminum facility. Uh, Another one was the quantum computer company, though that those were slated for also our defense area, and then 43 reactors for Homeland Security as well. And so so it was very nice, tough jobs, but it was really cool to figure out a process, and I love that part of this job. I mean, my wife's like, "When are you going to retire?" I said, "Never. I love what I do." So I
You get
feel
to
like I'm
problem
like,
solve.
well, I love that because it's engineering on a different scale, on a different level. I have no idea what I'm going to walk into. Is it a chemical processing plant? Is it, do they make widgets? Do they make whatever, And I get to figure out how to mitigate that contaminant and get this company up and running as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and I would definitely say that one of the most important parts of what we do every day is that critical thinking, that problem solving, that engineering. I also think no day is the same, right? Which is
Oh, I love
also
it.
keeps our work so
Yeah,
exciting.
yeah.
So we talked about the assessment, the during, the communication, some of the projects you've done. But, once the work is complete, what can restorers do throughout the life of the project that makes invoicing and invoice audits smoother? And what documentation tends to make the biggest difference? This question is such an important question because everybody's always talking about it. So give me your thoughts, Boris.
Well, so again, it's during the initial from the beginning to the end, you start. So I do every job backwards, and starting with this is what the finished product should look like. Here's what our documentation should look like. So at the end of every project, by the time we finish it, all of our documentation should be complete because our documentation is done from the get-go, from every day, the daily reports, the daily crew logs, the daily consumption reports, all get disseminated to the insured, to the carrier, to their consultants, and us internally. So our back office, our home office, takes that information that's collected in the field by the field reps that we have that are important. So we have a station that has an open book. So anybody can come in and take a photograph of our daily crew log when people signed in. So I love transparency. To me, transparency is about everything. And
Mhm.
so once we get done with the job, all of that information is already in a spreadsheet. All we have to wait for. The biggest holdup for us is hotels giving us their folios at the end of the job so that we can verify it against our records and then submit it for payment.
Yeah.
But basically it's doing the initial and throughout the entire project process, keeping those records straight. And once you have that, it's pretty simple because the insurance carrier and their consultant already have that information. You send it to them on a daily basis.
What I was going to say, if you look at the job backwards, it also gives you a foundation to say, hey, these are the expectations. You're starting expectations from
Exactly.
the get-go. And
Yep.
then with your debriefs that you mentioned earlier, some of those things that you learned prior that you maybe not have done as well is part of that foundation that you're laying. So I think that there's a critical viewpoint on doing things backwards because I also think too, in what we do every day, we have to know what the endpoint's going to be. It's not just, hey, we need to get them back up and running. What does that really look like
Exactly. What
into the
does,
details?
yeah, my big question always is, what does clean mean to you? So that is very, very critical. Like in a functional clean for the manufacturing facility of aluminum, they did not need a clean room clean. They needed a functional clean, which is a totally different clean. Um, Now, the quantum computer laser company, they needed a zero contaminants clean. So that was a Q-tip clean, so to speak. So it was a totally different clean. So the outcome. So for me, I need to wrap my brain around what does it look like at the end?
Mhm.
And then I work backwards from there to ensure a positive outcome. So I always use that with my employees. So we need to look at the finished product and make sure that we take appropriate steps necessary to ensure that outcome.
I think that's a genius way to approach it. And if anybody is listening to what Boris just said, this is an opportunity to implement something like this into your business because I think it's really important because you're able to set realistic expectations too from the beginning. I think sometimes when we have people come into a job, expectations can be a little confusing because some people only maybe work on part of the project and they don't really understand what that end looks like. And I think you mentioned, the amount of meetings you guys have, you're able to talk to everybody about everything that's going on, what you want to accomplish for that day. And I think it's really important to have that implemented, but most importantly, your team knowing what the end result should be and the expectations, right?
Correct. Yes, absolutely.
Well, Boris, it's been an absolute honor and pleasure. You have shared so many insights and so many
Oh,
examples, and I really appreciate you just spending some time with me today. And for all of you watching, we will see you on the next episode of Ask the Expert. Take care.